Okay, we're beginning a new Siman tonight. Taaruvot, Siman Kuf Ches. Yeah, we're almost at the finish line, right? Taaruvot.
And Kuf Ches, and Kuf is like the number one in Gematria, it's 18.
The name of the Siman, the title of the Siman is Shelo Le'efot Heter Ve'isur B'Tanur Echad. We're going to be speaking about the different kind of Taaruvos, and that is the baking, or the roasting, or barbecuing of Isser and Heter, very in close proximity to each other. Close proximity could be an open fire, it could be inside an oven. There are various situations, and there's several concerns here. So we need a little bit of a background as to what the issues are. We have a sugya in Psachim, there's a sugya in Avodah Zarah, and there's some mention of it, I think, in Chulin too, about how to go about if it's shayach b'chlal lechatchila, or at least b'di'evad, if we have something which is treif, being roasted in close proximity to something that is mutter. Now, what is the concern? The concern is about reicha, something called reicha. Reicha is the odors, the vapors. We will see later on there's a term called zeya too, the sweat that is emitted from the cooking. Yes, go ahead.
Question, but isn't
that's what we're going to be talking about. So that's a good question. That will be included. Eventually, if I forget, remind me. Can you smell something treif? Yeah. There's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah which some of these halachas are taken from. You have a barrel of wine of a goyish wine, right? And there is a particular cork where you remove it to smell to see if the wine is fresh or good or not. Are you allowed to do that with yain nesech? Because yain nesech you can't even have hana from. And is that a form of hana, benefiting, to figure out? You're working for a non-Jewish company. Can you do that? With stam yainam, which is not yain nesech, the wines that we have today, is less of a problem. And so we'll be discussing this. So the same would be true with that. And Mr. Shem, next week, perhaps we'll do it when we talk about, at some point, can you taste Isser? Just to taste. Yeah. And we spoke a little bit about without swallowing.
A wine taster.
A wine taster, without swallowing. Right. Can you just lick it without, is licking any easier or better than putting it in your mouth without swallowing? So even though we briefly touched upon it in the beginning of Hilchos Taaruvos, we'll go back to it because it's shayach over here, and then we'll cover that too, with smelling. We'll cover all the senses. Yeah. So this is a unique situation because we don't have tam, or we don't think we have tam. Tam keheter. Tam ke is, tam keikar, where even though you don't have the mamoshes of the iser, you have the tam and the flavor, and of course that is a problem pretty much as the mamoshes is. Except that with tam, you have bittul, and with mamoshes, you have bittul, but not if you identify it. Right? So here we have something called reicha. That is the makor, that is the issue that is going to be discussed over here. So in order to understand a little bit this first seif, which we're going to cover tonight, a little bit of background. The Gemara in Psachim, in Vav, on the base, has the machlokes there of Rav and Levi. There's a similar machlokes between Abaye and Rava in the Gemara of Avodah Zarah. So there in Psachim, it talks about Basar shchuta that was roasted next to Basar nevela. They were very close to each other somehow. This should not necessarily be done, as we will see lechatchila. And so the whole Gemara gives the appearance that it was done with the eved. But it will still be a question whether you can do it lechatchila. But the appearance, according to most poskim, depends how you learn it, is more that it happened. And now the question is everything okay? Basar shchuta, meaning basar that's kosher, right, was roasted close to basar nevela. And even though it says that tzoloi, the lashon is tzliya, roasting, it's not necessarily talking about barbecue. Because tzli, to roast, is many, many times used in an oven. There's no water involved. We've been speaking about tzli all along. even though we mentioned both kinds of sleep, whether it's being barbecued together, close to each other, or in an oven, they're very much similar. It's heat. Here, however, it needs to be really talking about more about an oven than on a barbecue. The reason for that is because the factor that's going to make a big difference here is the enclosure that is trapping the reach, if the reach is meaningful at all. Okay? So even though it's the Gemara there seems to be talking about sali, think about it as sali happening in an enclosure. Okay?
How big would this be?
We'll get to that. That's a good question. That's part of the shir tonight. So here we have a situation where the two are next to each other. So what do we do? So Rav says it's asar. And Rav's chidush is, even if the Basar shchuta is the one that's shmeina. In that Gemara, it talks about shmeina and chusha. It talks about two kinds of meat, Basar shchuta and Basar nevela. And it also introduces the fact that one of them is fatty, and the other one is lean. And these are terms that we're familiar with. We've actually applied them in various situations. We've even discussed what the concept of pitum is as a result of having something. And something that is fatty has within it the ability to be mefatem. Mefatem means that it can carry itself over. It can make that which is adjoining to it greasy. So the chidush of Rav is that even if the Basar shchuta is the one that's shmeina and the Basar nevela is lean, it's still a problem because mefatem hadodi, they can make each other sweat and become greasy and fatty and absorb something. Not tam here necessarily. They're not that close to each other that there's going to be tam coming on. Right? They're not touching. That was a separate problem. Touching, right? Touching is touching. And even then, even though there's no water, there's intense heat. Intense heat, something, it penetrates. The question is how much. And the question is if shaman makes a difference or not. So here, the chidush is, they're not touching, because we're talking about smell, the reach. But the way the Gemara learns it, the chidush of Rav, who's the one that's going to say reicha milsahi, the reich is something that we need to be concerned about. It is something. Is going to be a problem even if the Basar shchuta is the one that's fat, not the Basar nevela. Kos shekain, if the Basar nevela is fat, of course. And Levi says that no, if they were roasted next to each other, not touching, reicha lav milsahi, and that's the halacha. Reicha is meaningless. It's lav milsa, meaning it's not significant. It's not mamashus of iser. It doesn't count. Therefore, it doesn't affect. And therefore, even if the Basar nevela is the shmeina, he learns just the opposite. Even if the Basar nevela is the fatty one, which according to others, for sure. No, according to Levi, if I say reicha lav milsahi, it doesn't make a difference. Even if
I recall at some point in time, not with Taaruvot, a whole difference.
Yes.
With respect to if there is that is giving out a
reach, yeah.
Odor,
Right.
aroma, food, and nevela, or if the
Right.
Gemara
Sure.
take another street, use another street, don't go through this restaurant.
Yeah, but that's...
So that's a whole different story.
Yeah, it has
I'm just
Sure.
mentioning that. So when we treifa that the reach is not milsa,
Right.
this means in this context particular.
Especially, yeah. But
So in other areas, a whole different story. It might be that reach does have a
No, not necessarily. No. The halacha is, when it comes to reach lav milsahi. That's how we pass. We pass like Rava. In the case in the Gemara of Basar, we pass like Levi here in this Gemara in Pesachim. Reich lav milsahi. We need to understand why. But basically, what that tells us is that the reich is not asar.
Need to
Never.
avoid
Yeah.
that.
Why do we avoid? For other reasons. It could be a lechatchila din, like we're going to see over here. It's a din in the lechatchila, not in the b'diavad. And you don't want to have. Anytime I go through a non-Jewish restaurant, I just have to remove the saliva. I just can't. I can't allow myself to swallow my saliva while smelling their roasted whatever it is that they're roasting. So that's what I do. Yeah, so that's why I just spit. I just can't handle it. I trained myself not to allow it to. And sometimes I take another street because of that. That's why I don't walk through Beverly Boulevard all the time.
It sounds like the Gemara is actually saying that.
No. In that case,
it's not because
it depends with avoid. That may be with avoid the Zorah, not necessarily. No, there's no Mara sign here. Nobody sees you doing anything.
No, but maybe because if a person in the odor, eventually he might want.
The aroma here is not usher.
Here.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
No. Yeah, but the halacha is not different there because nothing different is happening.
No, because of Yehurim.
Oh, but that's not the case.
That's what I'm saying. A whole different context, a whole different halacha. There might play a
role. Well, there may be other explanations for other situations, but as far as the isur, we're not eating it, we're not swallowing it, we're not enjoying it, we're not in any way benefiting from it really, and therefore the reach itself is not a problem. But still, it's a machlokas. The machlokas has to do with reach, nothing else. There's no contact over here. The din is very, very different if there's contact.
So Rav says that it is us.
It is. Okay. Now, the Ran says that according to Levi, who says that it's mutter, the reason for it is because reach does not have the koach to aser b'di'evet. Why? Because there's no mamashas of Easter. In other words, there's no mamashas. There's nothing really here. And the reach itself, even though it can penetrate, it doesn't really produce anything. Oh, that's a very good point. What if it's a very, very strong? So and we'll see that next week when we talk about dvarim charifim. The din changes. Yeah, because there is a process called smoking. And
smoked turkey.
Yeah, it really absorbs a tremendous amount of flavorings and everything just through the process of smoking, and that is heat, even though there's no contact. But smoking is already could be a little bit different. So we'll talk about it, Mr. Hashem, next week. So that's a good point. If it's very powerful, and it's powerful as a result of something, either dov or chorif, something very hot, sharp, it's going to be an issue. It's going to be different, definitely. Yeah. So good point. So that's what the Ran says. So generally speaking, reach is not something that's strong, and that's according to Levi, of course. It doesn't really pose a problem. So in the event that we're talking about, that they both are sitting next to each other, and there's something flowing in between them, and of course that would be different. But not in the general situation that we're talking about in Sif Aleph. Okay, halacha l'maaseh. That was the sugya in Psochim, and that is also a sugya in Avodah Zarah. What do we do halacha l'maaseh? The halacha l'maaseh, we find it's a big machlokes of Rishonim. The Rif brings down the machlokes of Abaye and Rava in Legabe Reicha, and he says that according to Abaye, of course, it's also according to Rava, it's mutter. And since we always hold like Rava when these two argue, except in the famous exception of the sugyos of Yal Kegam. There are several sugyos in Shas, and these are the abbreviation. Ya'al, Yud, Ayin, Lamed, Kegam. Right? These are sugyos in Shas where Abaye and Rava have a machloikis, and there we hold like Abaye. So we hold Abaye and Rava, we hold like Rava, except for the sugyos of Yal Kegam. All right. So therefore, the Rif who mentions this, who brings down this machloikis, says that therefore the halacha here would be like Rava, very simple. That reicha is lav milsa. The Tur, if you're able to look inside the Tur directly, you will find that he also brings Rashi. That it's understood from Rashi that he holds like Levi, and Levi is the one that holds that reicha lav milsa, and therefore it's mutter. What didn't we see so far? We didn't see so far the words lechatchila or bediavad. Well, that the halacha is like Levi. The Rashi holds like that. And the same is true, you will find in the Bal Halachas Gedolos I saw, the Rashba. The Rambam makes it very clear that it's mutter. Okay? In other words, Reicha Lav Milsahi, we pass him at least Bedi'evet. Rabbi Yochanan, I think, and Rabbeinu Tam, they pass him like Rav, that it's Asa. And the Tur, it appears from the Rosh that his father, says that it would be also Asr, because he holds like Rabbeinu Tam. But the vast majority of Rishonim hold that we hold like Rava, like Levi, that Reicha is not something that you're concerned, at least in the B'di'evet situation. Why do I say B'di'evet? Because the Ran, in further explaining this Machlokes, says that the whole sugya in the Gemara is a din of even lechatchila. The Ran, explaining that sugya in Psachim, says that Machlokes is even in the lechatchila. Levi says no problem. If you look in the Rif, you know what the Rif is. The Rif basically takes portions of the Gemara, Halacha l'maisa. So he doesn't. You look at it, it looks exactly like the Gemara, but it's not all of the Gemara. So where's the rest? Just copying or commenting on certain sections. So on this particular sections, he says no. That even though Levi was matir, he was only matir b'di'evet. So the Rif does not learn like the Ran. The Ran says it's lechatchila. But the Rif has a point. I mean, the way you learn the Gemara, the way you read it, it appears from the language that's being used that if it happened, it's b'di'evet. Who's to say that you can do it lechatchila? It doesn't say. Why would you want to do it? I mean, of course, what situation would you have that that people would want to do it? I mean, people want to roast next to each other. I mean, so the Rif says no, only b'di'evet. What Levi said is only b'di'evet. He would never allow anybody to do it lechatchila, to roast or bake, even though they're far apart in an enclosed area, kosher and treif. And it's not that we have a concern if they may touch. It's not like we have to make a gzera, some of it may spill over. That's a different problem. Here we're talking about that would not happen. It's only reicha. The Rif says that din of reicha of Levi, that Levi says is mutter, is only mutter b'di'evet. Yes.
Is the Rif giving us a principle on this and everything else is asur?
What's that?
Is he establishing a principle there?
Yeah, that's...
That everything, that the only things that were mutter from the Torah, and that we can't go beyond, and the Rana said, this is not prohibited, therefore...
Well, the question is how to learn the Gemara. I mean, you have a machlokes, because it can make a big difference. If you hold that this is permissible lechatchila, that means it's never a problem whatsoever. The Torah did not prohibit reach. The Torah said that's not an issue. I mean, you may be disgusted by it, you may think that it's not a good thing to do, but if somebody wants to do it, you can't stop him. That's what the Ran says. I mean, Levi says it's not a problem. Unless there's some other concern. It happens, it happens. We're not talking about using the same barbecue, the same oven that was used for treif now to bake kosher. Because then you're dealing with blias, perhaps, that which has been absorbed, right? And this is also, by the way, going to be an issue with basar b'challah. As I explained, we're going to be talking about how to make cheesecake and tenderloin steak at the same time. Or fish with meat at the same time, which is also a problem. How can you? Can you get away with it? Is it possible? The balabosta has a lot of work to do before Yom Tov, and she only has one oven. Can she do it lechatchila? So we're not going to be doing treif, chas v'shalom, but basar and challah. Presents the same problem. For those of you who learned basar v'chalav, that's exactly the last seif. Remember, Ilan? The last seif of Tzadik Zayin, of how to do it, how to accomplish it. Can you do it and how to do it? So we'll get back into that last seif of basar v'chalav soon. So the Ran says yes, lechatchila. The Rif says no, not lechatchila. That it's only b'di'evet. And the same is true with Tosfos. If you read through the Tosfos, you will see that he learns Rashi, that Rashi, in interpreting Levi, that Levi's matter was only matter b'di'evet. The Rambam, the Rashba, you learn the Halacha, it's mashma, of course, that if it was done, it's mutter b'di'evet. So it seems like the consensus is that the Halacha is b'di'evet. We still don't know what exactly the parameters of the Isser is. In other words, under what circumstances, what kind of an enclosure that Elon was asking about. What about the oven? Does it make a difference in size? We don't know yet. Because what I've done so far is give you an introduction, and then once we have an idea of where everything is coming from, what everybody says, we'll learn it inside the Mechaber. So what we do know so far is that it appears that the consensus, the general consensus is that the whole halacha that we hold like Levi, that we hold like Rava, the Reichas Lav Milsa, is only a din b'di'evet, not lechatchila, that you should be able to just put two close to each other and allow and absorb the reach.
Now, why is it that here we are seeing any problems with Leah?
Yeah, eventually we'll come to Zeir. That's something that's mentioned in the Ramah.
Prevent us from doing it anyway.
We'll talk. There's various circumstances, other details, factors that can affect the outcome of this, experience. Right? All right. What's interesting is if you see the Beis Yosef on this, as far as lechatchila b'diavad, he explains that is why the Rambam wrote the following halacha, that bread that was baked with meat at the same time, meat was being roasted, baked, and bread was being made, challah, whatever. You're not allowed to eat this bread with melichas. That's the halacha towards the end of Basar b'chalav. Right? In Basar b'chalav you learned that. You cannot take this bread now and eat it for breakfast with your milk, or with your melicha meal. In the Shulchan Aruch, Mechaber Pasins like that Rambam. So he says, le'inyan basar b'chalav, that din of taking the bread and eating it with chalav is a din lechatchila. What does it mean a din lechatchila? Because in a sense, it's a davar sheyesh lo matir. It's not a real davar sheyesh lo matir. You can eat this bread at night. You can take it for lunch and eat it with parva or with meat stuff. You don't have to have it with dairy. It's not like the bread is no longer usable. It's just a problem. Don't eat it with milk. Eat it with parv. Eat it with meat. So the Beis Yosef explains, you see from this halacha of the Rambam that don't eat it with milk, that is a din of lechatchila. Because had it been mutter lechatchila, why can't I eat it? So that is because you could b'di'evet eat it with others. Lechatchila, don't therefore eat it with milk.
Now, which it would be usher b'di'evet.
Yeah, nobody's saying here usher b'di'evet because we hold like Levi.
I
right?
understand the argument exactly.
In other words, the Beis Yosef is saying a raya that to the poskim who hold that the whole din of Levi is a b'di'evet din, that lechatchila you should be able to do it. Even those who say it's reichalav mil say it's only b'di'evet. This is a raya from the Rambam's halacha.
That it's indeed a b'di'evet.
That it's indeed a b'di'evet, because there's a halacha that if such a bread was made with kosher meat, baked at the same time, you can't eat it with milk. Had it been mutter lechatchila, the Rambam wouldn't have said it's aser.
Well, it seems to me obvious. If it's mutter, he wouldn't say it's aser. It's the argument.
Well, saying over there we see, you can't use it with milk.
Right.
Okay, so that is indicative that it's a problem in the lechatchila.
It's the argument. I'm not understanding.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you.
Sure.
Maybe I can
Yeah.
make it clear. Is he saying that since we have on the one hand the opinions that you are allowed to eat it when it's cooked together,
Right.
and on the other hand the Rambam paskins that by Basar b'chalav it was cooked, you're not allowed to eat it when it's there. So how can you have both? You are allowed and you're not allowed. But it goes to show you that the you are allowed case has to be a di'evet case, right? That's the argument.
No.
So what is the argument?
I didn't maybe explain it right. In Basar b'chalav, you have a situation where a piece of bread was baked with meat. Okay.
Yes. Now you're not allowed to eat that bread with
right.
milk.
That's what the Rambam, that's the halacha, and that's what Mechaber brings down to. That is an example of a lechatchila and a b'di'evet that we're talking about over here. Why? Because over there, what's the din b'di'evet? The din b'di'evet over there says you could eat this bread with other things. Therefore, don't eat it with the milk. Because eating it with the milk would be a lechatchila din. You follow me? In other words, if we hold lechatchila something is mutter, just go ahead and eat it. Over there, since you can eat it with other things, with other foods, with fleshik food, with other food, right? The eating it with the milk is a lechatchila din. It's not telling you, what's lechatchila b'di'evet with meat. Okay, lechatchila you shouldn't do it, b'di'evet, you did it. Okay, it's not the end of the world. He's telling you, the Rambam, no, you can't eat it. It's aser.
Even b'di'evet you can't eat.
Why? Because like a basar b'chalav, chalav, in other words, like a din of basar b'chalav, is a din of lechatchila. You don't have to. You don't have.
In other words, the fact that you can
still consume the bread with other things.
With other things,
right?
This is what is the basis to usher it with milk.
That's correct. This is the right. Very good.
And since this is since it is with keeping in mind that you can eat it with other things,
yeah.
so you're not losing this bread. You can eat it with other things.
Exactly.
So why be so generous and allow it now with milk?
That's right.
So that makes it a lahatchila din, meaning to say that if we wouldn't be able to eat it with other things, then maybe b'de'avad we would allow it. But since here you can eat it with other things,
very good. Yeah.
So therefore we are applying only what the lahatchila of the din is to this particular case.
Right. So in Basar v'chalav, the din would be a lechatchila din. In other words, that is an example.
In other words, the Basar v'chalav, the only din is the one that otherwise would only be lahatchila.
Yes. Yes. So in some ways, it's also proof. I mean, indicative that, I mean...
So ate this piece of bread by accident, you didn't know it was meat.
That's not a problem. It's not a problem, right? Because we hold Reicha Lav Mil Sehi across the board. But the Rambam says over there, don't eat it. So why not? Why not there? Right? And he says, because that, it's a lechatchila din, because you don't have to.
Yeah, the lechatchila of the din applies by Basar v'chalav bechlal.
Bechlal. Yes.
Without exception.
Without exception, yeah.
There is no b'di'evet that you could eat it.
Because the b'di'evet there is you could eat it with other things.
With other things.
Yeah.
Since you could eat it with other things,
is that understood? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You can have another. So there's a whole Ramah on this. What if you can't eat it with it? But we're not going to get into that right now. Whether you're allowed to anyway, if that's the only meal you have, and is there any b'di'evet room for it? Some say yes, some say not. But anyway, so that's the halacha there in Basar b'chalav. So before we go on, just a quick understanding of Reicha. There's an interesting Kreisi Ufleisi that describes the issue here of Reicha. Is this a problem midrabanan or midoraisa? Because nobody seems to speak about it. So the Kreisi Ufleisi gets involved. Let's analyze this a little bit more. It's a machlokes to begin with. Is this in a deraisa or in a derabanan? In other words, according to Rav, who says it's asur, right? Or even according to Levi in a davar charev that we will see later on that they would hold that it's asur too. The whole concept is this the deraisa or the rabbanon. And the crazy place who wants to prove from Tosfos, which I didn't have enough time to go through, that it's the whole din is an isur Torah. I'm sorry, the crazy place says that it's not an isur Torah. There are others who disagree with the crazy places that it is, but he says it's not. And the Primigodim says that the Isur Torah would only apply in a Dover Chorev, which we'll cover another time. But the crazy place who wants to prove that the whole Isur here is only the Rabbanan. It's not a real Isur Deraisa. And we've had many such examples of Isurim that the Rabbanan, pretty much made. There's a Biura, Dover Shish Matira, in all kinds of situations where there is no Isur Mamesh min Torah, but there's an Isur min Rabbanan. Tosfos brings down something more in addition to that one who's koilet, he absorbs the aroma of something which is asur with his mouth, not with his nostrils, that it would be asur. According to the one who says it's asur, according to Rav, that would be asur too, to absorb the aroma with one's mouth.
Inhale it?
Exactly. Yes, to inhale it. Because inhaling the aroma, as the Poskim explained, this shita would be equivalent to something giving tam in a heter. So, I don't think you're about to inhale all these conditions, but just want to know.
But now I have a problem.
Yes.
So if you have the bread baking or whatever is baking, to inhale you're not allowed the aroma.
Right.
When you come now and eat the bread, then with the bread you have a bit of an aroma of...
Yeah, but that's nothing. That's a good point. Good point, because of the quantity. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you have the aroma still there, is that a problem? It's not, because it's very, very little. So good point. But so here, according to the ones who say it's asur, would inhaling be a problem? The Tosfos says apparently yes, that it would be like you're actually eating it. All right. So far, what have we seen? We've seen that there's quite a few machlokes in it, but we're not that concerned because we know what the halacha is. Pretty much the mechaber, the ramah. Everybody's been in agreement, as we saw the various rishonim, that reicha lav milsi. Now we've come to the big question: under what circumstances? What are the parameters? How are they being baked? How close are they? Is reichel never a problem, or is it a problem sometimes? Because we said blanket, reichel av milsehi. But it makes a difference, at least in lechatchila. Okay? This is going to be lechatchila. We're going to see that it's going to make a difference in the size of the oven, number one. And I think we may benefit from a chart next week. There's going to be quite a few. Huh? Yeah? Good. Good. We may benefit from a chart. But anyway, I'm going to make it easy, even without a chart, for tonight. We're going to see it makes a difference the size of the oven. We're going to see that there's going to make a difference whether the oven has an opening or not, of where the door is, how big the opening is, right? We're going to see that it's going to make a difference if it's fatty meat, lean meat, right? If it's a davar charif or not, if it's spicy or not. All of that is going to make a difference. Why is it going to make a difference? It appears from the way Tosfos learns the whole sugya that in the Gemara's time, they were using small ovens. That's what it appears. So therefore, based on that, if an oven would be larger than your typical, maybe that wouldn't pose a problem. Why? Because when you have a large oven, especially if you have an oven with an opening, then you have all the aroma spreading out all over evenly and exiting the oven. Right? So if the oven would not be completely closed, perhaps it would never be a problem. You don't have to be concerned. So we see from this that all of this will make a difference. And before we read it inside, or maybe we should first read it inside, I'm not sure. We will see that there is a machlokes in these various scenarios. Maybe let me briefly tell you what the differences are. We have like this. Concerning ovens, we have big ovens and small ovens. Okay? We have closed ovens and open ovens.
And semi-open, somewhat open.
And semi-open ovens. That's very true.
Ovens with grills in them.
He used to work for departments.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he knows all the
Yeah.
ovens. And
Yeah. If the tanur, the oven, is small and closed completely, we're going to see that the mechaber is going to say it's asur lechatchila. Even in that one, he's going to say it's muter b'di'evet. That's the chiddush with the mechaber. The mechaber says, and the way you see it in the mechaber is because he doesn't make too much distinction, so whether it's big or small. So even if it's something small, even if it's tanur of the time of the Gemara, if it's small and it's closed, of course, lechatchila it's asur, b'di'evet it's muter. Ramah says that it's asur, even b'di'evet, according to the Yesh Omri. Then he brings down, it's apparent that even b'di'evet we're noig to be machmer, unless the good news is, the Ramah says if it's a hefsed meruba, the famous hefsed meruba, if it's a major loss, just the caterer didn't know what he was doing. And loaded, or the balabosta didn't know what she was doing. And it's Erev Yantav, just tremendous.
sufficient.
Right? Then it would be muter b'di'evet, the hefsed meruba, according to the Ramah. Yeah. Now, the Isser Beheter I saw brings down that a small oven that is closed is worse than anything else, because it's worse even in the Gemara's times. Because in the Gemara's times, they had perhaps a small oven, but it was somewhat open. So that is why if your situation involves a small oven that is closed, supposedly, I mean, most of the poskim would answer because it's a worse situation than the Gemara's example. But the Mechaber doesn't make that distinction. He does the evidence mutter. Fine. So that's a tanur katan that is satum. Then in our next example is a tanur katan and patuach. It's open. If you go through the Mechaber and the Ramah, you see that the halacha is pretty much the same. Ein litzlos lechatchila. You do not roast lechatchila, even if it's open. Okay? Even if it's open completely. B'di'evet, we don't aser, even if it's only opened a little bit. Like let's say there's a small hole to let out the smoke, a vent like we have in some of the ovens. Have you seen, by the way, the microwaves that are also the vent through? They act as a vent. In some kitchens, you have your oven, and then you have your vent on top. That's kind of right. There are microwaves that sit on top of the oven, okay? And they act as a vent too. They have a system where they vent the vapors of the oven, yeah. Different kind of technology.
The benefit.
The benefit of it? That you can have a microwave on top of the oven instead of finding another location for it.
So it's a locational.
It's a locational thing, yeah. So, if it would be opened a little bit, or from the side, because there's a difference according to some whether the opening is from the side or from the top, but apparently even if it's from the side, a little bit over the opening would be mutter b'di'evet. How about a big oven? That's where things become interesting. A big oven that is completely closed. Shulchan Aruch says it's mutter lechatchila. I'm sorry, Shulchan Aruch says it's asur lechatchila. Any kind of baking is asur lechatchila, especially if it's closed. But it's mutter b'di'evet. Ramah is not very clear, so the Pri Megadim writes that the Ramah would hold that if it's a big oven but it's closed, it would be similar to a small oven that is closed. The fact is it's closed, and we still have the same problem. That it would be asur b'di'evet, unless of course it's a hefsem eruv. Fourth example is you have a big oven, but it's open. It's open, entirely open. In other words, a big opening. This case, the Shulchan Aruch is matar lechatchila. This is the only one. Big oven and big opening, or open completely. What does the Ramah have to say about something like that? The Shach says that even here would be matar lechatchila. And even though he seems to be saying that nohagu just says that, the minhag is all the time to asur lechatchila. Perhaps the Shach says that the Ramah was only indicating if it's only open a little bit, that the Ramah would asur. But if it's open a little bit, but the evidence it would be okay without a hefsed meruv. But if it's open completely and it's a big oven, according to the Shach, the Ramah would agree that it's a chatchila.
Do we know?
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. That's a very interesting area. Yad Yehuda brings down the Pirush Yad Yehuda that the Ramah would asur lechatchila even if it's completely open.
May I ask a question?
Yeah. Right.
So why are we being suddenly open or closed? Why the Reicha and Milsa once the oven is closed?
No, that's what they're saying. That the problem were mainly in an enclosure that had no way for the air or smell to escape. If you have a situation where everything would be wide open, the question is, would everybody agree that lechatchila it's okay? There's no problem with the reicha. It's spreading out. It's leaving. It really won't affect. That's what Mechaber says. That by taner gadol u'patuach, it's not going to be a problem. The Ramah seems to be machmir more.
But you're only worried that something should. If its presence would constitute a problem. But when we say reicha lamilsa here, we're not saying if it escapes.
Yeah, but that's what they're making the distinction. That's what now we're beginning to see. We learned the halacha, but does that halacha apply all the time or not? What are the circumstances?
So
what's involved? Does it involve any kind of food, whether it's fatty or not? Does it involve a dover chor? We haven't seen that yet. What about the enclosure? Does it depend how close they are? If they're completely enclosed, there's no way for the aroma to escape.
You're saying there are certain circumstances.
There may be,
under which reicha lamilsa applies.
Right.
Now, the other circumstances where reicha lamilsa does not apply.
No, we hold reicha lav milsa here. And that's what the Mechaber says. No matter what you have, but the evidence is going to be mutter. That's why the halacha is clear. And the Ramah is going to say at least it's mutter behefsed meruba because of that. Right now, so the question is lechatchila. Remember, we just said before, the whole machlokes is: are they arguing lechatchila or b'di'evet in the Gemara? And that also there was a machlokes, and that is why we're taking this one step further. Okay, did the Gemara mean only in their kind of ovens? What if the oven was very, very large, and what if the oven had an opening? Does that going to make a difference? That's all. All right.
Are we saying only if the ovens are a particular size and open, then reicha lav milsa? Or are we saying because reicha lav milsa, so therefore if the oven is open and large, then it's no problem?
No, we're saying, can we allow lechatchila to cook two things together, one asur, one mutter, or basar b'chalav even? If the following exists. We have a very large oven, and the reicha is going to be less of an issue. Can we allow for that lechatchila? Because we paskened that we're machmir lechatchila.
But you saw you just said because the Reicha is going to be less.
Yeah. In other words,
But how can a Reicha that's
because
be
because we're machmer lechatchila, we're concerned.
So we don't rely on Reicha lav milsa.
Not lechatchila. Lechatchila, we don't. In other words, we paskin because we need to paskin like one, and we paskin that it's mutter. But did we paskin that it's mutter lechatchila b'diavad? That's a machlokes.
So it could be that Reicha lav milsa only applies to the.
Yes.
And
That's how we paskin.
And latchila Reicha lav milsa does not apply.
Lechatchila, we have to be concerned that it's an issue, it's a problem. You don't allow lechatchila. Yeah. So the question, wait a minute, but what if the oven is big? Does that, diminish the problem? Chemically, it does. And so that's the question. Well, will the Chacham allow me now to make cheesecake and chicken for Shabbos at the same time in the same oven? It's nogea. This is nogea lemaisa. We're going to be talking about. You follow? I have, you have those ovens, whether they're standalone or whether they're built in, and they're large enough where you have 2 or 3 trays. They're called, or not trays. They're not trays. They're those metal grills. You can put one on top, one in the bottom, one in the middle, whatever. Can you do it at the same time?
But that's stacking them above each other. The room
no, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference so much. We will see perhaps a little bit it makes a difference if you do it, which one is better or which one is preferred. But Lemaisa, it doesn't really affect. And we're going to see the greatest news of all. The greatest news of all is if you have one of them or both of them covered, sharing the same oven, very, very close to each other, but one of them or both of them are covered, then you really don't have a problem. But even that, there's lechatchila b'diavad according to some poskim. What can you do? What should you do? What preferably you shouldn't do? So that's what we're discussing. So we need to see the makor. That's what we're doing tonight. Seeing the makor, the machlokes are rishonim, the poskim, how they see the Gemara, how they learn the Gemara, what the maskana is, who do we hold like, and would it make a difference now? If the size was different. So the Mechaber, of course, says that if it's a big oven, we're going to see it's going to make a big difference. The halacha, as far as a big oven, by the way, and it's just partially opened, there's a shach that says that the Ramah understood from the Shulchan Aruch that would also be also lechatchila and mutter b'diavad, because partially open, the Mechaber didn't mean that it's mutter. He's only referring to completely open, and that's a big chiluk because many of the ovens are not completely open. It's not like one of those ovens that has have you seen them?
Our ovens are
exactly. It's not like those ovens they have out of clay. Have you seen it that it's open on top? There's like for the smoke to escape, or from the side. Yeah, ours is pretty much closed, and not only closed, it's sealed
because we don't want the heat to escape.
Right. So that's the Shach discusses that the Mechaber. The Ramah understood that the Mechaber would also not allow it if it was partially open, only b'diavad. And the same thing with the Ramah. The Pri Chodesh, however, says that it's masha from the Shulchan Aruch that it would be mutter lechatchila even with partially open. If it's a big oven, you already have the advantage of a big oven. You don't necessarily have to have big and wide open. Even partially open would be good.
Now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Would partially open mean half open? Would half open same thing as fully open half of the time?
Fully open half of the time? That's a good question. Yeah, why would you do it half of the time?
Maybe it was closed, and now I come and say, before it's closed, I open it up, and the other half of it's cooking will be now half.
I would. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that since we hold b'diavad, it's mutter, that it would. This would be a question in a b'diavad, right? The chatchila, you can't close it.
No.
So the whole question would be a b'diavad then.
I'm saying you found it already closed.
The question is a b'diavad.
Can you state it by opening it?
Yes. Yes. Apparently you can, because you have on who to rely that says that even if it's closed all the time, b'diavad is better. At least behave some meruba. Yeah, but it's a good question. Would it make a difference half the time?
Yeah. Instead of saying it's still half the volume.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So these are the differences.
Another question: if it's half open or closed, maybe it's like. But it's a fun question, I think.
All right.
If you have an oven that's half open, and you have another oven standing next to it, it has both a header. You have a second oven standing next to it that's completely open, also is a header, except for the opening in the second one is half the size than the first. Yeah. So it's completely open, but the hole isn't larger.
All right. Yeah.
It's a fun question.
Yeah, it's a fun question. Okay, we'll talk about it maybe next time. Yeah. Not to get too carried away. before we discussed the last item for tonight, the actual size, what are we talking about? Just another footnote, an important footnote that was that the poskim do discuss if everything is kochush, if everything is lean, would that make a difference? Because it appears from the Gemara, if you learn it, that the part of the problem is that one of them makes a difference. Which one is shaman? But if everything is lean, if we're talking about food items that are lean, perhaps we have this additional leniency.
That we have to look at it very clearly.
Yeah. So the Rashba brings down, and Shach and Taz very much discuss this point here. I don't know if we have time, maybe we'll discuss it more at length next week, that it would be mutter. Yeah. Others are machmer. Others are machmer. That machlokes applies across the board. It's the same whether it's kochosh or shaman. But some, the Rashba brings down, and there's quite a few who agree with this, that if everything is kochosh, it's not going to be as much of a problem. Remember, when something is kochosh, you don't really have that much of reicha. It's not as strong too. So everything being kochosh may make a difference, at least according to the Rashba. Okay, size. What are we talking about? So let's quickly go through the Mechaber, the Ramah, and then we'll discuss it. So Mechaber reads like this: Ein sonim basar ksherim basar nevela osher behema tmei betanu echad. You do not roast basar that is kosher with basar that is not kosher, or of behema tmei in one oven. Afal pi shein noigim, even though they're not touching each other. Being solon, but if you did roast them together, that is a mutter. So it's b'diavad, right? But even if the nevela here, the tray for one, is very fatty, the hamuteres rozon, the one that's kosher food, the kosher meat is lean, still makes no difference. B'matanor godol, and if the tanor is big, what's big? Shemachzik yud beis esronim, it can hold the volume, and I'm going to explain this, of 12 esronim. It's a measurement. Upiv patuach, and its mouth, its opening is mutter, so you need two, big and open, mutter. Lechatchila. Let's throw some boy to roast it. Bilvad shelo yiguz bezeh, of course, as long as they're not touching each other. V'mechad behem nechusa bekar, if one of them is covered with a tray, or bebasik, or with dough, it's sealed, aluminum foil. V'chayoytze bo, etc. Mutter litzloisem afilu betaner cotton, upiv satum, even in a microwave. Microwave, yeah. You took a flight in the good old days when they served you a meal for free, right? They warmed up your food in a non-kosher microwave, and they may have done it at the same time. I don't know what size, but it's completely sealed. No problem. It's a tanur cotton upiv sasum. It's completely sealed. So that's the mechaber. Lechatchila, if it's big and open, fine. Otherwise, if you did it, you shouldn't have done it. If you did it with the evidence, it's okay. Ramah. Who adin lebasar chalav? The dinim that we're learning right now would apply to basar and chalav too. Na medina hacha, like we learned in Hilchos basar b'chalav. No hakin, however, the meaning is lehachmi lechatchila afilu betanur gadol. He doesn't say if there's an opening or not here, but even if it's tanur gadol, but the eved lehakil afilu betanur cotton. So he holds by the eved like the mechaber. Ve'im of a pas in basar. If you bake the bread with meat, also lochem chalav, don't eat it with milk like we learned before. Im yeshlo pas acher. Here the Ramah adds a little twist. You eat it with something else, not with your milk. Im yeshlo pas acher. If you have other bread to eat now with your milk. So what if you don't? That's where the poskim discuss this Ramah. Ramah says, don't eat this pas with milk. If you have other bread to eat it. In other words, eat it with meat or with parv. What if you don't have other bread? You want to have bread right now. Right? You just made yourself, I don't know, something with Melicha. So some say the Ramah would say, okay, go ahead and have it. But the Evan. Yeah, sure. That's what it seems to be. He says, Im yeshlo pas acher.
He says expressly.
Yeah. And some say, no, the Ramah would not allow it either. V'chein imoy v'kochavim ofo pasim isur. Same thing with the bread that was made by a goy with isur on it. Also, liknois oiso, pas.
Who was not on it, with the same oven.
Right, in the same oven. In other words, the goy baked the bread together. That is together in the same oven with the isur. That's correct. Also, liknos oiso pas im yesh pas achar. You have other bread. Don't buy that bread. It was baked in the same oven at the same time that tray food was baked. The bread is kosher, but don't buy it if you have other bread. The kol ze mikra. All of these are examples of lechatchila. Aval meino pas achar berevach. Okay, if you don't have a large amount of bread berevach, mutar b'shnehem. So here he seems to be saying that b'di'eved it would be mutter even in the case of basar b'chalav supposedly. All right. Yesh oimrin the ein matirin reicha afilu b'di'evet. Here he says. Some say you're not matir reicha even b'di'evet. Ela im ken atanu patuach tzat min hatzad, unless it's open a little bit from the side, or lemala b'mokom sha'osh yoseh, or on top where the smoke comes out from. B'mokom hefsed ein lahachmin b'di'evet. So what he's trying to say here is that even b'di'evet, don't be matir unless there's some opening. But the hefsed meruba, you're matir even if it's completely closed. Okay, so that's why I said with a chart you'll be able to see it. But the basic difference is that the mechaber says it's mutar b'di'evet even if there's no opening, and you don't need to have some meruba. And the Ramah seems to be saying we're not noying to be matar even b'di'evet in these kind of situations unless you had a little bit of an opening. Otherwise, it's mutar behefsed meruba only, and that's in the case where even if it's closed.
Does the Ramah himself actually use meruba or does he hefsed?
Hefsed, he says.
When the Ramah says
You're right.
always mix it with
That's a good question. You're right. There's a difference. There is a difference.
Also.
Yeah. There is a chiluk when the Ramah says hefsed or when he says hefsed meruba. So here, he's saying hefsed.
But the commentators seem to think that.
If you read the commentators, we're talking about a situation where there's a big hefsed. Okay, but you can argue on that. That's a good point because there is a chiluk in Yore Deah. You do see that distinction between hefsed or hefsed mu'at, as they say, and a hefsed meruba. And here he doesn't say hefsed meruba. Mokum hefsed and nachum v'di'evet. Afilu sosum legamre, completely sealed. The ima isu dover charif. We'll leave that for next time. What happens if the isu is dover charif? We'll continue for that for next time. But as far as size, let's go back to size now. Size. What are we talking about? The mechaber said yud beis esroinim.
So we're talking about the size of the oven.
The size of the oven.
No, the isu.
Yeah. Yeah, we find from the Mechaber elsewhere in Basar B'cholov that I think it's a smak, that's the shear of Yud Beis Yisrael, that the oven has to hold a certain amount of volume in order for it to be considered Tanur Gadol. Now, the question is, are we talking about the volume of the entire space of the oven? As the Pri Megadim says, the Pri Megadim brings down several of the shitas. In other words, is the entire volume of the oven have to be like that? Or are we talking about the floor space? That's another shita. Or are we talking about, like the Iraqi ovens, that you need to be able to bake 12 asronim of bread on the walls of the oven?
Yeah.
You remember that from Basar B'cholov? Yeah. You discussed that though? Yeah, at that time? Yeah.
It occurred.
So this can make a big difference. Now, if you really go through the calculations, you'll find it difficult to believe that a Tanur Gadol, but it's still possible because he said so. It's other than the volume of 12 esronim. And I'll tell you why. They don't make them that big if you're talking about 12 esronim floor space. 12 esronim just on the wall. If you figure the calculations of 12 esronim it's very difficult to imagine such a big oven. Not even the commercial ovens are that big. Yeah, not even them. That's what's especially if you hold like the Shita of Moshe Feinstein, and I'm going to explain that. There's a machlokes between Achronim, Moshe and others, as to how much a tefach is, how much an etzba is, and so forth. The basic volume of 12 esronim, according to one of the famous Shitas today, would come out an oven the width of 5 1/3 tefachim. A tefach is anywhere between 3.7 to 4 inches. Okay? So what you have here, let's say you have 5 tefachim, is 20 inches, 22 inches with a third, 21 inches. Great. So far so good. Width, we have it. Our ovens are a little bit more even. Some of them are wider than that. Depth, it would involve the depth of 7 tefachim, and the height 7 tefachim. The volume of 12 esronim, right?
How many tefachim? How many did you say?
We would have, based on this calculation or measurement of 12 esronim, you would have 5 1/3 tefachim width by depth.
By 7
7 by height 7. You have height 2. That volume, based on the sheet that explains that we're talking about volume, that would be the volume of a nice size oven that we have. Our ovens, therefore, would qualify as a Tanur Gadol, just that they're closed. And when we learn the halacha l'maisa, we will, I'll share with you. What halacha is today, that we don't lechatchila, of course, do it at the same time. But what happens if you have no choice? How to do it? You can't do it. There is a way to do it. There's a lechatchila way. There's a b'di'evet way. There's a way to do it that you can have it lechatchila at the same time. Because we're machmer today, not even in the same day. Okay, but we'll leave that, maybe. So that's the machloikis here as far as the sizes, how you hold, and of course how you measure and how much a tefach is. It actually comes out, if you want to know as far as how much the stronim are in volume and as far as not size, it comes out to about close to 30 kilo of bread. That's about a little over 60 pounds of bread. So it's quite a bit of bread. What is that?
That's going to be more than the whole oven.
Remember, we're talking about volume. Our ovens have not that you can actually...
I thought you said a weight, that this would be the counterpart of 30
kilo. Right.
The weight of it.
The weight of the bread. Yeah, but that would be the amount...
In other words, if we fill up this volume with bread, that same bread would weigh 30 kilos.
Yes. That's what I saw. I mean, somebody bring this little note.
I don't think we can put 30 ovens.
Oh, that's because we have it separated.
Take the separation out?
Take the separations out, and if you had... Yeah.
That's about, 60 loaves of bread?
Kind of bread.
Yeah, depends on the kind of bread. Yeah, yeah, but I wasn't. I myself wasn't sure about this 30 kilo, but based on the measurements, many of our tanur would qualify as a tanur gadol. The only thing is, again, we don't have openings all the time, not even half the time. Depends.
Buy a loaf of bread.
No, depends on the bread. Depends on the bread. You ask a Persian, he'll tell you lavash bread is very light. It all depends on the bread.
We're talking about if we're going to say 30 breads, we're not going to talk about something exotic.
Yeah. Remember, a lot of the challahs have a lot of air.
No, you don't have to be.
Yeah.
A whole grain
Yes.
is going to weight.
Fine, so how much does a whole grain bread weigh?
Sourdough bread, a real
Sourdough.
is going to weigh multiple times.
Yeah, sure.
Fine, so how much does a sourdough bread weigh?
Anyway, yeah, it's okay. We don't
Still
need,
not that heavy.
We don't need to figure this out right now.
Just saying it's still not that heavy.
But apparently, based on the basic measurement, unless you go by the measurement of Moshe Feinstein, it may be a little more of a problem. But it could be that it would work out. It still would work out with some ovens. The problem begins when you go by the measurement, or you apply that measurement to floor space, a wall. Then it's almost impossible to think of such a large oven. But I guess in theory, everything is possible. But quite a few poskim I saw say that many of our ovens are considered tanur gadol. The only thing is that it's closed. So that's why we still have some of the issue. But at least we know that b'di'evet, it wouldn't be a problem. So Mitzvah Hashem, next week we'll get into a little bit more the details of how to do it lechatchila, what to do in a b'di'evet situation.